Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Eye on College Basketball YouTube channel. My name is David Cobb. I'm joined by 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting, Adam Finklestein. And we have got something a little special coming to you today. It is a mix of prospect evaluation, which is Adam's specialty, along with a little bit of a preview of the season ahead, the 2022-23 season in college basketball. We are going to draft the freshmen who we think will be most productive in the sport in the season ahead. So not necessarily the guys who we think are the most surefire NBA draft prospects, not necessarily a regurgitation of the prospect rankings by any stretch, but we're going to look at rosters for the season ahead and see where some freshmen might be able to come in and pop immediately. Adam, how you doing? You fired up for this little exercise we're about to do?
Yeah, I like it because so often when we're ranking prospects, we're trying to account for multiple variables into one final ranking or rating, and this really zeroes in on who's going to be the most productive college freshman. So it talks about who's college ready and also who has an opportunity. So I like your idea here. Let's get it going.
Yeah, so I'll be honest. Part of the inspiration for doing this was the last time we talked. We were getting into the class of 2024 rankings, and then shortly thereafter, you guys dropped the 25 rankings. And when I start, my mind just can't work this far out. Like, I don't know how you guys do this because it's amazing.
I didn't do much of it, to be honest. I was like, they're too young. I don't know,
Yeah, so I'm like, man, I gotta sink my teeth into something a little bit more immediate here. And I'll also admit, like, I do the freshman watch. So every week, once there's at least a little bit of a body of work out there after the season starts, I rank the top 10 freshmen based on their cumulative efforts through the season so far. So this is kind of a way to do some advanced prep for me, some homework. So
all right, let's get the cheat sheet going here. Here we go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you got your big board ready?
Now, what are the rules here? I've got to get, do I need one at each position, or is it just five?
That's right.
Five best?
I'm glad you. No. I'm glad you asked that, Adam. If it's not too much trouble for you at Finklestein State University, we're going to require that you guys trot out a reasonably reasonable lineup. So you can't have five guards. You can't have
play small ball.
Well, look, as a huge advocate of small ball and undersized players, I will be lenient here. Like, if your tallest player is 6'6", like we can work with that. But to a reasonable degree, try to put five players together here who could reasonably see the court together. And if we get through our five each and it just doesn't make any sense on the court, we'll pick a sixth. That way we can sort of have a bench piece in there to plug in.
All right.
So ready. Hey, now that I've hit you with all these rules, let's have
you see me do this. It's me glancing at my big board over here. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, I want you to have the first pick, Adam. I want you to have that.
Wow, I'm flattered. All right, I'm gonna go to Waco, Texas. The prospect who was number 7 in the 24/7 Sports composite last year. But he was, let me see what we've got here. He was number 9 in the top 24/7 rankings, and that is Keyonte George. I was actually at Baylor last week, so I got a little bit of a sneak preview here. He looks great physically. That was my biggest concern with him coming out of high school, was his conditioning, but it's really changed his body. He put up big time numbers in their summer trip to Canada. Now, some of that was by necessity because they were missing both LJ Cryer and Adam Flagler. So Keyonte kind of had free reign in the backcourt, but he's a proven scorer. He's going to come in and have an opportunity to do what he does best right off the bat. And so when it comes to this fantasy league, he is my first pick in the David Cobb draft.
I love it. So what we're trying to do, just to reiterate, we're trying to select the freshmen who we think will be most productive in the season ahead. And there is good reason to believe Keyonte George will be very productive. Baylor loses James Akinjo, Matthew Meyer, Kendall Brown, Jeremy Sohan. All those guys, very productive players, gone from last year's team that earned a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So it's a question of, do Flagler and Cryer just pick up more shots and more of that production? or do they turn to a freshman there in Keyonte George to really score a lot? The other guy to watch out for at Baylor, I think, and you were just there, but Dale Bonner could have a breakout type of year, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different guys. I was really impressed by their total depth. I think Jalen Bridges, the West Virginia transfer, he had a great trip to Canada in the summer. Again, it was a little bit of a skewed perspective because Flagler and Cryer didn't play, but they've got depth. They've got shooting. But I listen, it's Baylor. They're going to let their 3 guards go. And Keyonte George is going to get his buckets because that's what he does. And so I'm making him my number 1 pick.
Yeah, look, me throwing you that Bonner question was actually my way of stalling because we don't have a built-in draft clock here. So I needed to make sure who I was going to pick here. And it's going to be, with my first selection, Nick Smith. So the Arkansas freshman, number 1 in the 24/7 Sports rankings, just an absolute offensive dynamo. The question with Arkansas, and maybe why I was at least a little bit hesitant on this, is because that roster has just been turned over to a degree that almost looks crazy even for Eric Musselman. And so you wonder, all right, who's going to score? Like, what are the roles going to be? How's that production division going to be? But I think there's really should be very little question that Nick Smith is going to be a huge contributor for a team there in Arkansas that's coming off back-to-back Elite Eight appearances. So one thing that really stuck out to me in making this selection was that if you go to his 24/7 Sports profile, Travis Branham made the Jamal Murray comparison, which I really appreciated because Jamal Murray, he averaged 20 points a game and shot 41% from 3 as a freshman at Kentucky several years ago. So if Nick Smith even gets in that neighborhood, I will look back and be happy with my selection here of him with my first overall pick.
All right. Well, with the 3rd pick in the Cobb draft, I'm going to go with Alabama freshman Brandon Miller, 6'8", 200 pounds. And again, I'm just putting a lot of stock into the intel we saw coming out of this summer. And Brandon Miller was a little bit of an enigma in high school, someone whose talent we knew quite a bit about. But Nick Smith on that same AAU team, Nick Smith got a lot of the shine, a lot of the numbers, but Brandon Miller is someone that I think, based on what we saw this summer, could exceed expectations for Nate Oates, another free-flowing offense where they're gonna play with pace, they're gonna have freedom offensively. And so I think Brandon Miller is a guy who's going to be able to have an opportunity in a role that's conducive to him being one of the best freshmen from a statistical standpoint in college basketball this year. So a little bit of a hot take, but I'm going with Brandon Miller at number 3.
Okay, from a role standpoint, can he be like a Herb Jones maybe?
You know, I mean, I think offensively he may have a little more versatility, at least at a similar stage. But and it's just, I don't think any freshman is necessarily ready to have that type of defensive impact. But long term, I think that's certainly possible and a great kind of it's a great target for him to emulate, especially because listen, all these guys have an adjustment to make when it comes to what is expected from them on a daily basis and also what is valued. You know, the college practices I'm watching last week, the guys who played were the ones who could figure out how to, recognize whether they were downing the sideline ball screen or if they were weaking it, depending on the part of the floor. And then I go to a camp over the weekend and that couldn't be farther from what the focus is. So things really, really change here. And these guys are adapting to a brand new world. But I think when you set the example of someone who really values both ends, plays as hard as they can, that's a great target to have.
All right. So Finklestein State has Keyonte George from Baylor, Brandon Miller from Alabama. So now it's time for the 4th overall pick in the freshman productivity draft. And with that pick, I'm going to go Amari Bailey from UCLA. And look, he's only the number 10 overall prospect in this year's class, but I think he could be really productive for the Bruins because they replaced both Jules Bernard and Johnny Juzang from last season's roster, along with a couple other contributors as well. Peyton Watson didn't really pop statistically, so I think some people might look at this and be like, well, did you see how Cronin used Watson last year? Like, why would you take Amari Bailey so early in this draft? Well, I think the reality is there was not really a spot in the rotation for Peyton Watson last year because of how much UCLA brought back. this year they have some significant holes to fill. And just with Juzang and Bernard alone, that's something in the neighborhood of 28 points per game they've got to replace. And that's not even counting Miles Johnson, Cody Riley, and some of these other players that are departing. So given how much of a scorer Amari Bailey is, from what I understand, it seems to me like he's going to be the type of player who walks in and gets double digits pretty early on in his freshman season. So he is my second pick, number 24 on Kyle Boone's NBA draft big board, by the way. So a potential first rounder there would be 2 years in a row after Watson went 30th overall. So anyway, yeah, Keyonte George, my second pick and the fourth overall pick here.
I just want to thank you for taking all of your time to make those picks, because as you see me doing this, it's just me researching my next pick there. So, and it's helpful. It really is. So
yeah, that's why I'm asking you these questions, by the way. Like, right. Hey, yeah.
Right. So I've got Brandon Miller. He's playing. I'm a small ball guy. He's playing the 4. I've got Keyonte George. He could go 1 or 2. I think what I'm going to do here, I want to be interchangeable with my forwards. I think there's plenty of bigs that I could get later. So I'm going to go to Arkansas and get Jordan Walsh. I can put him at the 4, can put him at the 3. Here's the thing about Arkansas. You know they're going to put up numbers. And there's Jordan Walsh. You know he's going to have an opportunity. He plays so hard. He's got the versatility. If he can make threes at a higher clip than we saw in high school, like if that part of his game can take the next step, he could very easily be one of the best freshmen in college basketball, because we know he thrives in transition. We know he can slash. We know he can be versatile defensively. If he adds that longer range to his arsenal, I think you've got a definite weapon there. So I've got both of my forwards and I've got a guard here. I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, Arkansas is going to be so much fun to watch. They always are, but this year in particular, with the heft of this recruiting class and the mix of transfers, like it's just, they're going to be must-see TV for college basketball fans. So that makes 3 of our first 5 picks from the SEC. I got to figure out real quick if I'm going to make that trend continue, because honestly, the person who is in this place on my big board would continue the SEC trend here. And I'm just going to go ahead and rock with it. And it's Gigi Jackson, going to be a freshman at South Carolina, was previously committed to North Carolina, reclassified. It was a little bit of a whole situation. Just a month and a half ago. And
a little bit of a situation.
All right. So I want to preface my pick here, or now that I've already made it, I guess post-face it, with the fact that I don't necessarily think that like the percentages and the efficiency are going to be all that impressive with Gigi Jackson, because he's going to be asked to carry a monstrous load for a rebuilding program here as they make the transition from Frank Martin to Lamont Paris. So I don't think it's going to be pretty, but I think it's going to be productive. I think they're going to turn to him and ask him to shoot the basketball a lot.
He's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to get volume.
Yeah. Yes, I think there's going to be volume there. So this is not an efficiency draft. This is a productivity draft. Gigi Jackson's going to be very young, going to be in the spotlight, going to be asked to do a lot. I don't think South Carolina is going to be all that great of a team, but Gigi Jackson is a top 10 prospect for a reason. And when you put a guy that talented on a roster like this, he's really going to have no choice but to be productive.
The UEFA Champions League on Paramount Plus. 9 months of heart-stopping, hold-your-breath exhilaration. That's brilliant! With more magic and more drama. While the former Bavarian nailed the back of the net in Barcelona, an American trades his stars with zebra stripes, and a Norwegian creates sky blue spectacles. Oh, so stream every sweat-soaked second of regulation time, stoppage time, and extra time. Beyond magnificent! This is the best of the best of the best. This is the UEFA Champions League. Stream every match live, exclusively on Paramount Plus.
So what do you got now? You got Gigi at the 4 or the 5. You got Nick Smith. And who else do you have?
And Amari Bailey. So I'm
Amari
going.
Bailey. All right, I like it. You got a lot of
interchangeability, like you said. Yeah. Well, Nick Smith and Amari Bailey, you guys list them as combo guards. I have no idea how their college coaches want to use them, but here at Cobb Tech, we're going to be able to rotate those guys, on or off the ball, and then Gigi can play the 4 or the 5. So we're all about that positional versatility here.
Right. All right. I think I'm I'm just going to take the best player on the board here, even though I don't expect him to be an offensive alpha, and that's Derek Lively. I do think he will be. One, I know this isn't what we're drafting on, but I think he's Duke's best prospect. I also think that when it comes to the totality of his impact, his ability to impact winning beyond just the scoring column, he could be the most impactful of Duke's freshmen. We know Dariq Whitehead, he's out with that injury right now. Lively has been the one who's gotten very consistent reviews. So when it comes to his, as I said, I don't think he's going to go get 20 points a game. I don't think he's going to get 15 points per game, but I do think he's going to be a double-double threat. I do think he's going to be a rim protector. I do think he's going to be play significant minutes up there with a 7'1" frame. So I'm going to anchor my lineup. I've got Derek Lively in the middle. So I've got Derek Lively at the 5. I've got Jordan Walsh and Brandon Miller combo forwards. I'm bigger than I would like to be here, Cobb. I want to go small. But it's turning out I'm going big because I got Keyonte George in the backcourt, and I'm just confident I'm still going to be able to grab a good guard here before it's all said and done.
All right. If you're struggling, Adam, we might let you have a 6th pick just to even things out, because I'm just sensing that maybe my prep was a little more thorough. My scouting department did a little more advanced work here than yours did. So
that's what happens to people who claim they win the draft on the day of the draft.
What's that?
They end up Porzingis ends up getting hurt and not getting a return on his investment. So we'll have to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't go Chet there a little too soon, perhaps. I think what happened
definitely too soon. Definitely too soon.
Actually, I think what just happened is you saw my selection of Gigi Jackson, and you were like, "Yeah, my combo forwards aren't going to be able to bruise with him in the post."
No, I actually no. I was just like, "Geez, I guess we're not taking efficiency into consideration in this draft." That was actually my thought.
Okay, all right. So I guess with my next pick, I'm going to go a little bit off the radar here, and look, I couldn't find anyone who was sub 6 foot to select in
with
this
all
draft.
Your preparation. You couldn't find somebody. Come on.
Look, I mean, I would have had to go into like the America East or like the CAA or something to find a sub 6 footer who I think is going to be one of the most productive freshmen in college basketball. And even then, it might have been a little bit of a shot in the dark. But I am going to go with a little bit of a under the radar ish guard here, and that's going to be JJ Starling from Notre Dame. 6'4", 180 combo guard. You guys have him
sub 6 footer stuff. He's 6'4". What are we talking?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like I wanted to take the short guy here, but I couldn't find the short guy.
Like Bruce Thornton. I was ready for you to say Bruce Thornton, but don't let me distract you. Go ahead, keep going.
So JJ Starling, being somewhat slight of frame, is going to stand in as my short guy here. So Notre Dame is interesting. Mike Bray's rotations are generally fairly lean. He typically only plays 7 guys in a rotation. And oftentimes you pull up their box score and it's 6 guys who get the lion's share of the minutes. And you're talking about a team now that loses Blake Wesley, Paul Atkinson, and Prentice Hub from a team that wasn't very deep. So you look at how much they relied on Blake Wesley last season when he was a true freshman. Clearly, there's no hesitancy to throw a true freshman into the mix. I think JJ Starling is appropriately ranked to come in here and make a pretty big impact right out of the gate. And he's actually snuck into Kyle Boone's top 30 of the CBS Sports NBA draft prospect rankings, which kind of surprised me a little bit. But I think it's a little bit of a sleeper pick, but I'm pretty fired up about it because I wouldn't be shocked if JJ Starling ends up averaging 12.5 points and 4 assists a game or something for Notre Dame this season.
Yeah, to be honest, if you didn't take him, I would have to finish my to get my last guard. But I'm gonna go with the depth of our scouting team over here at Finklestein State. We're gonna take an even bigger outlier here. The 61st prospect in last year's top 24/7, heading to Syracuse, where I think he's got a chance to start as a freshman. Certainly put up numbers because he can play multiple positions. Made a big jump last year at Oak Hill Academy. And that's Judah Mintz. Syracuse went and got him last year. They knew they needed an immediate impact freshman. They already had a deep class, but they needed somebody capable of coming right in and playing a prominent role from day one. So again, it's got a lot to do with opportunity here. But when it comes to who is going to be the most impactful college freshman, I think Judah Mintz is certainly has a chance to be a prospect that outperforms his final ranking out of the high school ranks. So Judah Mintz from Syracuse rounds out my starting 5. and we're feeling pretty good about it.
Okay, do some homework while I make my last selection. I'm going to give you a 6th pick, just so
I don't
we
need
can
it.
have somebody off the bench.
We're confident with our 5, but
Okay.
we'll take another one.
Does it bother you, by the way, that I assigned, Finklestein State as like your school name? Like, do you wish that you were a more academically advanced university, like at Cobb Tech? Like, obviously,
Cobb Tech.
We study engineering and mathematics, and you guys are just kind of a state university.
No, we're a basketball school. We embrace being the basketball school.
Okay, so you appreciate that the standards for academic entry are a little lower. It makes it easier to get guys into school.
Yeah, we just want to sell tickets. Yeah.
All right, so I got to make my last pick here, and I think this one is rather obvious, honestly, given that I need a front court player. Kyle Filipowski from Duke. He's the number 4 overall prospect in the class. He's going to be the 10th player selected in our 2022-23 productivity draft here for the freshmen. But, one thing I reflect back on is when we talked about Duke's signing class over the summer, you said that the center label, it's just a label for Kyle Filipowski because he can do a lot. I'm not going to compare the guy to Chet, just yet, but he is a projected first-round pick, and Kyle Boone's NBA draft big board. He, I think, projects somewhat similarly in the lanky frame, the ability to handle the ball. Who knows? I think he might be a little more versatile defensively, just in terms of the ability to move laterally from what I've seen. But I'm gonna round out my lineup here with Kyle Filipowski. He's part of Duke's number 1 overall recruiting class under first-year coach John Shire, and that gives my lineup the final look like this. It's going to be first pick was Nick Smith, guard out of Arkansas. Then I went Amari Bailey, guard UCLA. Gigi Jackson, forward South Carolina. JJ Starling, guard Notre Dame. And then a front court player here with my last pick, Kyle Filipowski out of Duke. So before we get to your draft, Adam, how would you assess mine? What do you think of what I did here?
C+. I think that you're putting a lot on Gigi Jackson. Kyle Filipowski, I love the dude. I hope he does well, but I know he's, there's talk about whether, who's going to get that starting nod. Is it going to be him or Mark Mitchell? So it's Mark Mitchell supposedly had a great summer down there. I thought I thought a Dembona maybe was going to be your pick in the last spot because of the numbers he's put up. But of course I'm obviously embellishing here because this is what we do on the Cobb Finklestein podcast. We just have fun with it. So no, I think it's solid. But I'm feeling, you mock our scouting efforts, but I'm feeling pretty good that we need to clip this podcast and re-air it in about 4 or 5 months and just see where the chips fell.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So I'm looking at your group here, and honestly, I don't feel like you guys have a true point guard. And that bothers me a little bit about your squad. You're asking Keyonte George to have an astronomical usage rate here as a true freshman. And then, are we totally confident in Judah Mintz and Jordan Walsh and Brandon Miller handling the ball on the perimeter? I don't know.
Judah Mintz is going to handle the ball at Syracuse. So if Jim Boeheim's confident about it, so am I.
Okay.
But all right, you want me to take a point guard because you don't want me to take the low-hanging fruit, but I'm not going to be swayed by this. I'm going to take Dariq Whitehead because the fact that the 3rd overall prospect on the board in last year's top 24/7 is still on the board here, I think is only because of the preseason injury. Because listen, he's a guy that's college ready. I think he can come in, and if he can get healthy, and first of all, let's start here. Missing the preseason, missing the first couple of weeks of practice, that's a significant challenge, both from a conceptual standpoint in terms of understanding coverages and a lot of this stuff we already talked about, picking up ball screens, coverages and stuff like that. And also from a conditioning standpoint, we saw the impact on Trevor Keels last year at Duke when he got hurt. Later, it was in the regular season, but he never really regained his form. So the reason why I have some confidence in Dariq Whitehead is the fact that I think he is better prepared than most, given his experiences. He played at Montverde Academy, I think, for 5 years, maybe 4. He's been a USA basketball product. So this is a player who is already very well versed in different coverages and things like that. He's physically mature. He's mentally mature. He was a prominent name as an 8th grader. It was really unfair for him, but he showed the maturity to kind of stay humble and continue to work and improve. I'm not sure that he's a total offensive alpha in terms of like, hey, give me the ball and let me go to work. But I do think he's someone that within the flow of the offense can be very versatile on both ends of the floor. And the other point is that John Shire is going, he needs him to do well. I mean, this is his first recruiting class. Lively, Whitehead, and Filipowski, if those guys do not have good seasons, that will be used against John Shire on the recruiting trail. So I think Whitehead, to get him with the 11th overall pick here, I think it's a steal. I think it just further cements the spread is going to be highly in my favor here in the upcoming season.
All right, fair enough. Well, for my bonus pick, before I fire back at you there, I'm going to go Grady Dick. Did you see what Bill Self has quoted in The Athletic on Grady Dick? Could be the greatest shooter they've had at Kansas. So he's the number 21 overall prospect in this class at 24/7, but he's a 6'7" wing who can really let it fly from deep. And I'm looking at Bill Self's quote there, and I'm like, dude, Devontae Graham shot like 41% on like 6 threes per game for you, and maybe Grady Dick could be an even better shooter than that.
Jalen Wilson challenged Grady Dick to a shooting contest as soon as that comment was made. So that's but no, I hear you. Great pick.
Yeah, I'm imagining that probably didn't go very well for Jalen Wilson just based on career percentages. But anyway, here's the thing with Duke, and I like your pick of Whitehead. I just think of their 4 like marquee 5-star freshmen. He seems the most likely to be more of a utilitarian, a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. Maybe not the guy who ends up with the ball in his hands late in the shot clock. And so
no,
I think
it could be. There could be. As I said, I don't know that he's an offensive alpha, but I don't really know that they have an offensive alpha. So I think it's going to kind of necessarily be like a by committee approach, at least relative to the underclassmen. And then, the guy with the ball in his hands may well prove to be Jeremy Fears, even if he's not the one that NBA scouts are going to be most intrigued by. But what else is interesting is the amount of quality talent that didn't get picked here.
Yes.
Again, I think Adembona is going to have a really good freshman year. I think Seth Trimble, obviously he's got some guys in front of him. So that was the reason I shied away from him a little bit, but I do think he's NBA ready. We've seen Jalen Hood-Schifino. You talked about what Bill Self just said about Grady Dick, what Mike Woodson just said about Jalen Hood-Schifino.
Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd.
Yeah. I mean, we are throwing some expectations at these freshmen right now, but there's and Jarris Walker in Houston. I mean, I think he's going to be a guy who's ready to come right in and make an immediate impact. So there's still a lot of good players on the board.
How crazy is it that we just drafted 12 players who we think will be the most productive this college basketball season, and none of them play for Kentucky? That's a sign of the times, right? Because Kentucky's going with a more veteran-oriented approach. They returned the National Player of the Year in Oscar Tshiebwe. Severe Wheeler is back. I did have Casey Wallace on my big board. If we had done drafted 8 players, I would have taken him because I think he slots in probably pretty nicely to the role that Ty Washington played last year. But the fact that no Kentucky players were selected.
And I think one of the things that made this fun, and it speaks to what you tried to accomplish with this, and this is in full sincerity here, is we're talking about which freshmen are going to be most productive. And again, more so from a statistical standpoint, at least that's the way I interpret it. You've got a lot of guys whose names we didn't say who are projected to be first-round picks still. Cason Wallace getting a lot of NBA hype. Kalel Ware at Oregon. I mean, that 7-footer is a huge talent. Dylan Mitchell, who I saw in person last week, and looks great, by the way. I think he's a one and done potential lottery candidate. So, but there's different. This is always the thing that makes evaluating interesting because we're really pinpointing one specific outcome here, and that is who is the most college ready and who's got the biggest opportunity in front of them. So I think, your question was about those Kentucky kids. And I think those guys are still going to be very, good prospects and have a chance to be very good. Chris Livingston, I think, is going to be able to step right in. I wonder about, can he shoot the ball well enough? Is there going to be enough room with Tshiebwe in the middle for him to really attack the lane as a driver like he wants to do? But Listen, a lot of these guys, whether it's now or later, limiting it to 12 players was a challenge. And there's plenty of names we didn't mention that could hear their name called in the real draft 9 months from now.
Yeah, no doubt. I'd love to be wrong about Jalen Hood-Schifino. I'd love to look back and say, wow, how did we not include him in this exercise? Because what Indiana has been needing for that breakthrough is elite, like high-quality guard play. Because I love their front court. It's been together for years. Race Thompson, Trace Jackson-Davis, those guys are awesome players. They keep coming back for more. And I just wish they had like an elite guard to go with them. Maybe Hood-Schifino is that guy. Maybe he ends up being a double-digit scorer as well. We'll see. But this was interesting. This was fun. It was different. But I feel like it was a good mix of your prospect evaluation chops, along with like a way to like preview the rosters. Because look, Adam, we got like just like a month until exhibition games fire up, roughly. So college basketball season right around the corner.
And it also speaks to the fact that, like, while I and other evaluators tend to be focused on the long term, a lot of our viewers are more interested in the short term. Like, hey, who's going to help my school win college basketball games next year? Because as I said, I was at Baylor last week, and Jeremy Sohan, like, he was a very productive freshman last year for Baylor, but he came off the bench and then he was a lottery pick. So it's just, the criteria is different. And so to be able to identify the freshmen that have a chance to be good right away, I think is a fun exercise that the fans will appreciate.
Yeah. And just because your player wasn't mentioned here doesn't mean they're doomed by any stretch. Go look at Florida State. Leonard Hamilton produces lottery picks who don't even start. So just because you're not going to be productive as a freshman, you can still be a one and done, even if you don't start on your college team.
Yeah.
Heck, that could be the case at Duke this year as well. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in to the draft. We'll reevaluate in a couple months and see if Cobb Tech got the upper hand over Finklestein State here. But until next time, thanks for watching the Eye on College Basketball YouTube channel.